Hi. So, welcome to day one of your email course. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is picking destinations. So, we are currently in Poland. We're in Krakow, Poland at this very moment of making this video. And um, we are next going to Warsaw. And we kind of just planned this just really a few days in advance, honestly, as to like where we're going to go and what we're going to do and why we're going to certain places. And really, it was just a path. We hadn't actually planned on coming to Krakow. And then I talked to somebody who is another blogger who mentioned Auschwitz. And we happened to be in Budapest at the time, and we were going to go to Brno, which is in Slovakia. And then after that, we were going to head to Poland, but to Warsaw. And we were actually going to go a different path than going towards Krakow. And we decided to go to Krakow because there's this town next to Auschwitz, which we thought, well, we can't not go to Auschwitz if we're here, right? I mean, we've got to go to Auschwitz. I mean, that seems like something that if you have an opportunity to go, you should go. Anyway, and so we looked at towns trying to figure out, okay, well, do we stay in Auschwitz? What's in Auschwitz? So I took Google Maps and I zoomed in, and in any town that you decide you want to maybe go to, there's usually like a little circle area, and that's the center of town, and there's usually a little area. You can do that in almost any city. Like you go to Seattle, there's a general circle around Seattle. You go to Rome, there's a general circle around Rome. And that's usually the center of a city. That's where the heartbeat is. That's the downtown area. That could be the old town. In Chiang Mai, Thailand, you could do the same. I mean, it's everywhere. And usually you'll see, if you go to Google Maps, you'll see this, if you zoom in, so pick any area. So like go to Auschwitz right now. If you type in Auschwitz, Auschwitz, and you're on Google Maps and you zoom into it, you're going to kind of see that there's not really a big circle area there, and there's not like a big town. Usually if you see a lot of yellow means that's businesses, buildings, things like activity. So if we zoom in somewhere and we don't see much yellow or any yellow, like that's a place that maybe we'd only want to go passing through for like a night, two max kind of a thing, because there's not going to be a whole heck of a lot to do. So that's Auschwitz. But there is something to do in Auschwitz, right? Obviously. But is Auschwitz the place you want to stay? No, that's not where you want to stay. We also drove through the town, and it's really small, and it's people live there, and but there's really not much else to do other than go to Auschwitz or pass through it. So we looked around and we kind of spread out Google Maps a little bit and see other cities that surrounded that had a little bolder letters. And one of those towns that was closest was about 45 minutes away, maybe half hour, 45 minutes away, Katowice, Katowice. So if you zoom out, you could probably see Katowice on there right now. So we looked at Katowice and we're like, okay, well, that's closer. There's also Krakow. And so we thought, okay, we go from Brno. From Brno, I zoomed out and I typed in to Google. Also, I opened up another screen and I typed in Katowice. And I typed in Katowice, and then I clicked directions from Brno and train. And so I looked that up, and then you can usually see like Katowice rail or Katowice train, and you try a couple different things because every country is different with how they look up stuff, but it's usually by rail or train. In this case, it's rail station. They usually go by rail station, not always train station. So I found that there was the Katowice rail station, and I went from Brno there and saw how long it took to get there, and it was altogether I had to take two different trains, and so we could have stayed in one location before that and then gone on, but that there was nothing to do in that town, so we're like, no, let's just go through it. So we figured, okay, well, when we go to Brno, then we can go to Katowice, and then I was like, okay, well, how long do we stay in Katowice? To be able to, because the only reason we're going to Katowice, like I don't even know what's in Katowice, I just know it's next to Auschwitz, and there's, when you zoom into Katowice, there's a yellow area, there's a circle, and then there's some yellow in the area. So it meant that there was stuff to do. And usually you can tell if there's like a shopping mall. Usually they're called gallerias a lot of times, or they do call them shopping malls, but gallerias are usually like a shopping mall, not just a store. And if there's a shopping mall, In this case, there was one attached to the train station in Katowice. So we thought, okay, well, we can just see if there's a place to stay near the mall. And then I go on Airbnb, and then I go on Booking.com, and I look at both of them to see, what the prices are for the area, because that also makes a difference too. We were going to go to Vienna, Austria, but I mean, the prices there were crazy stupid for what we'd want to do there. And because our budget is not, I don't plan it a month ahead for our budget. I plan it kind of as we go. I set a basic budget, and then we just try to hop in, and depending on where we go, we try to stay within that budget, so it lasts us the whole month for our lodging and for travel and all of that. And I was like, I just didn't want to spend the money to go to Vienna. It might have been something we did in Brno for a day trip, but that's not what we chose to do. Anyway, if you're still with me here, I looked up Katowice, I looked up places on Airbnb and Booking.com, which I'll get to it a little bit later, and the prices were good. We usually like to stay within $35 to $50 max per night in a place. Usually $35 or less is preferred, because then that saves us money to be able to do other things as well, and it helps us stay under budget if we can, if we're 35 or under, but I do give us padding. Anyway, so to go to Auschwitz, we zoomed out because that was not a place to go stay. Katowice was close. I looked on TripAdvisor to find out where the best tours were from to go to Auschwitz, and the majority of the tours were actually in Krakow, but that's because Krakow is a much bigger city than Katowice is, but Katowice is closer, and we have a 2-year-old, and there were a couple tours that did go there, and so we decided that we would go to Katowice and take the trip there, but then on our route to Warsaw, going through Krakow was, you just kind of go through Krakow to get through Warsaw. Why not? So we also decided to go to Krakow after on our way to Warsaw. And Warsaw, we didn't necessarily, we didn't care where in Poland we went. We just wanted to go to Poland. But Sean met this young guy in this pub in Budapest, and he was from Warsaw, and he said, okay, you have to go to Warsaw. And anyway, and so that just confirmed that yes, we'll just go to Warsaw. And that's kind of how Sean and I do things, but that's not how most people do it. That's probably not how you do things, right? But I'm just trying to give you a general idea of how we pick a destination. So depending on what your personal needs are, let's say most people like to just go to Hawaii and Mexico if they're from the States. And if you're from Europe, usually it's much easier for you to take a train and go to all different countries and cities across Europe. Much easier than if you're in the States trying to go somewhere. You don't really take rail, you don't take Amtrak across the United States because that's expensive. Whereas in Europe, the rail system is so much cheaper. You can even go first class in a rail system, and it's a breeze in comparison. So when you're going to pick your destination, you need to think, okay, where do I want to stay in this destination? So for example, if you want to go to Hawaii, you need to just do a little legwork, okay? You need to think, okay, I feel like Hawaii is where I want to go, but why Hawaii? Is it because it's only, maybe like from Seattle, it's only a 5-hour flight from Seattle. If you're in New York, that's going to be a much longer flight, 8 to 10 hours, depending on if it's direct or, how you choose to go, or if there's stops or whatever. It's not necessarily, but it's much easier for people on the West Coast to get there very easily, like it is for going to Mexico. So you want to figure out, okay, why do I want to go to Hawaii? Is it the beaches? Do I want to be in a beach? Do I want to be in a city? Do I need a beach and a city kind of vibe? If I need a city and a beach kind of vibe, again, use Google Maps. And I want you to just think of all the places you've heard of. I keep a list of places that people tell us about. Like we just found out about Ghent, Ghent in Belgium. And so we looked up Ghent, and we're going to look it up and see if we want to go there in one of our next few stops. But I write them down and then we research them. So let's say you're going to go to Hawaii and you want city because you want things to do, because maybe you have kids and you don't want them to be bored the whole time, and maybe maybe they're teenagers and they want things to do. So you probably want to go to Oahu, because Oahu has more to do. And if you go look at all the islands of Hawaii and you zoom into each one, and you'll see the little center area usually, and you'll see yellow. If you see a lot of yellow, that usually means city, more to do. So if you zoom into Hawaii right now and you zoom into Oahu, you're going to see a lot of yellow, and it's going to be near the beaches. It's not going to be like in the center of the island or anything like that, but it's going to be in, Honolulu area. So that might be where you want to start your search, because it's going to be city life, lots of things to do, businesses, ice cream shops, food. There's usually going to be tour guides in every island, of course, but there's probably going to be more just general things to do on the daily basis. Walking around town is also a thing to do. When you're in a much smaller island, first off, you have to fly into a bigger island, and then you have to take a small little plane in. And so that could be an extra cost that you need to consider. So you need to look at all of that when figuring out how you pick a destination. And everybody's budget is different. If you're watching this, when I say budget travel, I don't mean that, we do everything, for as cheap as possible. That's not what I mean. What I mean is we've set a budget of what we can afford each month, period, based off of what we generally make each year at that time of year. We have a cyclical business, and so certain times of the year we make more, and other times we make less. So if we're going to be traveling at a certain time of year, we like to look at, which we travel all the time, but if we're traveling, let's say, we know May and June and July is usually, we'd make less money those months than any other months in the year. So we try to be in places that we have less expenses in. There may be way low season in that place. There's going to be, it's going to be off season, so things are usually cheaper. It's going to usually be in a part of the world that is more cost effective. A lot of times, like Southeast Asia, it's not a time I'd go to Hawaii because school's out. You think school's out, everyone starts going on their vacations to Hawaii. So we would not be going to Hawaii in May, June, and July. But we might go in December or January when the weather's maybe not quite as nice. So you're giving off certain things to get others. So picking a destination, think about what time of year it is that you're going to go. You have to think about off season, and you do have to do some research. Like if you're watching this and you think, oh, Wendy's just going to tell me exactly what I need to do, that's not it. It's there's tools that you can use. There's a site called Numbeo, and if you go to Numbeo, you can type in your city that you're from, and you can type in, once you figured out maybe a destination you'd like to go to, maybe you have 2, 3, 4 different locations, you can type in to do a comparison against that location's numbers. And what that does is you'll see like Seattle versus Warsaw, for example. You can look and see, okay, the cost of the general monthly wage, the general cost of living, how much it costs for eggs, how much it costs for bread, how much it costs for water, beer, a mid-sized meal for 2 or for a family. It's going to compare those numbers to what has been listed by other people who visited the site as to what they normally pay in Seattle versus what people are currently paying in Warsaw for those exact same things. So we can look and see, okay, when we go to this place, it's going to be a little bit more for food, but getting around is much easier. And so maybe our travel budget for our, for let's say taxis or rail or buses or whatever flights are maybe going to be a little bit less than it's going to be if I go to this place. So maybe that's going to be what does it for you, what's going to pick that location to be your destination. So Numbeo is a really great site to use to compare. I would definitely get on there and start playing around, and if you have a couple destinations in mind, and look at what the daily life is compared to where you live now, because you are an expert at what your budget costs you each month to live at. And if you're looking for a place that's maybe half as much, Hawaii's probably not the place for that, but maybe Thailand is. And maybe with the cost of, if you go anywhere in Thailand, really, even Bangkok, Phuket's going to be a little bit more just because it's island life, and they can charge you more depending on, again, what time of year you go. If you go October through December, January, it's going to be cheaper because it's low season compared to the rest of the year, which it starts the higher season, better weather, everything. So people are going to go to the beaches there. So again, check out the time of year that you want to go. Click on Numbeo. We also look at weather. We look at the weather guide and look at year-round weather Thailand, year-round weather Warsaw, And that way we can figure out what the general weather is so that we can plan on what we're going to wear. Do we need to buy a bunch of clothes? Is that in our budget to go to this destination? So destination just isn't like a simple thing that you can just say, I'm just going to go here. Unless that's what you like doing. If you want to pick, hey, this is where I want to go. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Tokyo. We've been there. I've been there 3 times. Okay, so let's say you want to go to Tokyo, Japan, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go there. I don't know what it costs, but I am dying to go to Tokyo, and I can only go for this 1 week in January. That's when I can go. That's when my time off is. That's when I can afford it. Everything. Okay, that's not bad. I mean, Japan in January should be cheaper, you'd think, right? We found out that actually it was a little bit more expensive than it was to go in November or December, which December surprised us because we figured it was a better time to go for Christmas time. But we had a harder time finding places budget-wise in January than we did in December. December, we were able to save more money than we were able to in January. More places were booked up. And they also did have some sporting events, and they are also planning for the Olympics. Those are all things that as you start researching a place, look on Google and look at the news for that place. What's going on in Tokyo in January? And type that in. That actually helps. So look that up, then look up Tokyo. Then you go to Google Flights. Google Flights is huge. We use Google Flights. We use skyscanner.com. So Google Flights, you type in google.com/flights, or just type in Google space flights and it'll pull up the Google Flights page. And I have that and Skyscanner up at once. And if you already know the location and the dates that you want to go and the dates you want to fly, then you're set and you're kind of like locked into those numbers if that's the location that you're choosing. But if you're a little more flexible, one of the fun things about Skyscanner in picking a destination is you can pick, let's say you're going from Seattle like we were, and you type in Seattle and then you can type anywhere. There's the second box for you to pick your destination. It can actually gives you an option of just anywhere. And what it does is it lists every country by cheapest. So like the cheapest place to go would next be somewhere else in the US, and then the next place would be up into Canada, and then the next place would be probably somewhere in Mexico if you're looking at Skyscanner. And then it's going to start listing other countries that you can start going to based on the lowest flight price per person. That is a really great. We do pick places based off of that. Sometimes that's how we picked going to Serbia. We were in Japan and we hadn't decided where we were going to go next, and we were looking for the cheapest place that we could go to get to Europe. And the first time we did that, we were in Sri Lanka, and we needed to get back to Europe. We needed to get to Europe to start our European part of our vacation. And Bulgaria, Sofia, Bulgaria was the cheapest place that we could go using Skyscanner to get out. And then we used Google Flights to pick the days of the week. And that's a whole other thing. I'll get into that when we talk about that on one of the other days coming up. But Google Flights, Skyscanner. Those will help you also pick a destination depending on what kind of traveler you are. And there isn't just one right way to travel. There's no right way to pick a destination unless it works for you. So let's recap a little bit and organize all these thoughts, because your head's probably going like, okay, this is too much information. And that's what this video is to kind of talk you through it, and then I'm going to in the information, I'm going to lay it all out in a much clearer way for you. So after you watch this video, go down and then you can start looking through all the information to figure out how to choose your destination a little bit better. But if you are a super tight budget and you want to go somewhere, I would use Skyscanner to start with. Skyscanner.com, type in your location, type in anywhere in the second box, and then you can choose by month. I would choose by month instead of date, because unless you know a specific set dates that you want to travel, it might make sense to choose the day before or the day after of certain days for travel days, because sometimes they can be cheaper, dramatically cheaper even, depending on what days of the week you can fly out on. So I would keep Google Flights open too and use that. So pick the cheapest location that seems the most exotic, or whatever it is that you're looking for. Maybe it's just you're looking for a weekend getaway in your state. And then you can just type in Seattle, and then in the box anywhere, and I'm going to say US, it'll pull up all the different places that you can fly to, and usually if you're whatever state you're in, it's going to pull up the closest airports closest to you, if that's what you're going to do. If you're going to take a train or drive yourself to a different destination, again, look on Google Maps. Unless you know the specific location you're going to go to, zoom into your area and then start slowly zooming out, and you'll see other cities start popping up in little bigger letters. If they don't, you probably don't need to go to them because they're very tiny, unless you're looking for a ho-dunk little town. Then, if you're in Washington, go to Washougal, Washington. That's a tiny little town. Anyway, you get the idea. So, but let's just say for the sake of this that you are trying to fly somewhere, and which is probably why you're watching this in the first place, is to figure out how to fly somewhere, do what we do, but on a budget. Skyscanner, Google. That's how we pick the locations based on affordability. Then we use Google Maps to double check to see what place we want to go to. Now, it might be cheaper to fly into a different airport. Let's say you're going to London. There's quite a few airports in London. It's also London Gatwick is not Heathrow, and London Gatwick can be a lot cheaper. If we flew from, instead of flying from Seattle, I figured out that it would be cheaper if we took a Bolt bus. It was super cheap. I think it was like $20, I think, altogether for all four of us to take a bus from Seattle to Vancouver, Canada. And then from Vancouver, Canada, we flew, it was kind of a silly flight, but we needed to get to the UK. And so we flew from Vancouver, British Columbia, the international airport there, and then it had a few hour, like a 10-hour layover in Calgary, and then from Calgary it flew to Manchester, and then we decided we had a house sitting opportunity in Manchester, or outside of Manchester, about an hour and a half outside of Manchester, in this little town called Haywood. Whole other story. Anyway, it's very easy to go from Manchester to London. Also, you can take trains, buses, you can take another flight. It's very cheap to go somewhere like Ryanair or Aer Lingus and some of these other flights if you want to just get into London. So figuring out the airports in the area also can help you with your budget and figuring out how to get in there. And again, I'll teach you that a little bit later on. But a destination, unless you know exactly where you're gonna go, keep it light and fun. There's so many ways that you can find a new cool place. Like until we went to Bulgaria, we didn't even know where Bulgaria was, to be honest. We just needed to get out of Sri Lanka and into Europe somewhere. I mean, we love Bulgaria. We ended up staying there instead of 2 nights. We were supposed to stay in Sofia for 2 nights, and then we got there and we were like, oh my God, we love it here. This is so cool. We added more days. We talked to someone who told us about this place called Plovdiv, which is one of the oldest cities in the world, and so we took a train to Plovdiv, and we spent 4 or 5 days in Plovdiv, and then we realized that we were near Varna, which was on the Black Sea, and we were like, I've never seen the Black Sea. Is it black? I don't know. And we went to Varna for a few days, and the Black Sea is actually really pretty blue. It's not black, but we would have never have gone there or had that experience had we not talked to other people in the areas that we were, and we never would have done that had we not had